Nigeria's participation at the ongoing Tokyo Olympics will possibly go down as the worst outing by our contingent since 1952, when the country sent its first batch of athletes to the Summer Games. Not only has Nigeria earned the ignominious distinction of seeing 10 of its athletes disqualified from competing in Tokyo for failing to conduct the mandatory 3 out-of-competition test before the Olympics, a star female athlete, Blessing Okagbare, was suspended at the weekend for testing positive for the human growth hormone. What is worse is that the athletes left behind to represent the country are falling short of expectations, as none of them has been able to redeem Nigeria's image by winning a medal. Although there is a light at the end of the tunnel with the qualification of the women, Blessing Oborududu and Ese Brume in wrestling and long jump. To discuss Nigeria's disastrous performance so far in Tokyo, we are now being joined from our Abuja studio by a former Minister of Sports, Malam Bolaji Abdullahi. Bolaji Abdullahi, good morning. It's good to have you on the morning show. Thank you for joining us. Well, very quickly.
Yes.
I'm really concerned about
Thank you.
About our team, Nigeria's outing at the Tokyo Olympics. We've had all kinds of stories about the team not going through the out-of-competition test, the mandatory 3 test, and the athletics integrity unit dismissing 10 of our athletes. In terms of performance, we've not also been doing well, although Nigerians are hoping that maybe in wrestling or 100 meters hurdles, we'll still be able to get something, no matter what. And then finally, we had this disgraceful controversy over officials stealing phones meant for the officials. Why do we always get it wrong? I mean, you were Minister of Sports. What is responsible for this, disgraceful outing on a repetitive basis within the international circuit?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Abati. What I can say is that anyone who is familiar with the Nigerian sports sector will not be surprised at all with what has happened in Tokyo. I don't know if this is the worst performance ever, but I recall that shortly after I joined the ministry in 2012, we went to London for the Summer Olympics, and we also returned empty-handed at that time. What I can say is that the lesson I learned from that experience is that the Olympics is the highest sporting performance on earth. There's no next level. So Olympics is not a place where you go to try your best. And that is why you see that some people can actually prepare the medal table before the Olympics, because you know where everybody is, you know who is doing what. So it's not it's not a place you go to try your best. If you come from nowhere and win a medal, people are likely to wonder whether you have used a drug or something, So I am not surprised. We've never done what we should be doing, We tried to build something after the London 2012, but of course it came to nothing, So, and I'm telling you that if we don't start now to begin to do those things that other countries are doing, even by the time we go to Paris in 4 years' time, the result is going to be the same, if not worse,
Okay, this is looking...
So, and on the issue of...
Go ahead. Go
on, please.
Apologies.
Go on.
No, please make a point. You were going to speak on another issue.
So I was just going to say that on the issue of the athletes being sent home, it's the kind of thing that happens when people are distracted or when they are overwhelmed, And I think the major issue is that there is the generation of professional sports managers at the National Sports Commission is disappearing. So you don't have people left in that ministry who are competent, who know how to prepare for competitions, who have a checklist of everything that needs to be done before you attend international competition. So, I mean, it's all hindsight, but I think that we ought to have done a lot better than we have done.
Okay, I think you already started responding to my question, because I was going to ask you, it's looking like deja vu when you were a minister and we went to the Olympics in London 2012, we had no medal as well. And as it's looking, well, we have some hopes in hurdle and in some races to come. But speaking to the issues directly, what exactly are they? Is it that we continue to appoint the wrong persons to manage sports in Nigeria? Is it because there are no consequences for failure? And when it comes to preparations, is it the issue of funding? If it is funding, why is funding of sports in Nigeria so heavily reliant on the government?
You see, thank you very much. You see, we keep making mistakes, thinking that Olympics is something you prepare for in 1 year or 2 years. Some of these children you see who are winning medals at the Olympics have been preparing 10 years ago. So performance experts will tell you that you need to put in at least 10,000 hours of preparation. And 10,000 hours means like 5 hours every day for 5 years. So it's not a place, it's not gathering a few people 2 weeks to the tournament or 1 week to the tournament and say, oh, we are going to the Olympics. So if you are talking about funding, the funding you are talking about is not funding to go to the Olympics. It's funding that you are providing on a regular basis over a 10-year period. Okay, I'll give you an example. Team Great Britain, after the fiasco of the Los Angeles Olympics, went back to the drawing board and budgeted £740 million to develop to prepare for the next Olympics. You know, and for London Olympics alone, they spent £264 million, an average of £4 million per medal. So every medal is carefully planned for and carefully prepared for. So it's not something that, like Nigeria does, 2 weeks to the Olympics, we provide $2 billion, 2 billion naira, and we say, okay, let's put some boys to go and try something. After London, what we decided after London was that Nigeria would require 50 billion naira over a 3-year period to prepare for this same Tokyo Olympics. 80% of that money was to come from the lottery fund. Then 10% from the private sector and 10% from the statutory grant. That didn't happen. And we agreed at that we're going to focus on only 5 sports: taekwondo, wrestling, weightlifting, athletics, and one other one, and boxing, right? But you see, nothing has changed. So it's not a question of, okay, if you like, appoint whoever you want, the most brilliant administrator, and put him in sports. I mean, if we don't begin to prepare 4 years, 8 years in advance, nothing is going to happen. You know, so, you know.
All right. Thank you so much for that. So there are many sides I want to unpack. You've talked about the lottery fund. I would like to ask, why didn't that come to place? Chioma Ajunwa also talked about, when she was here a couple of days ago, weeks ago, I should say, she talked about the fact that companies used to sponsor them back in the day. I think she mentioned Classic or something, one of the companies that sponsored her back in the days. We don't have companies adopting athletes in this country any longer. I mean, why is that the case? And what would you have done if you were minister with all of this happening? Because apparently it looks like the sport minister doesn't even feel the pulse of the nation. It doesn't know that Nigerians are hurt, that we have gone to disgrace ourselves at the Olympics again. The Athletic Federation had 2 factions before the Olympics. We were fighting here and there. We're not coordinated. And our ineptitude just ruined the Olympics for us. That's the long and short of the story. So what would you have done differently? Maybe you can give him some cue. I know you don't like to talk to your people that take over from you and things like that, but show him the way, please.
Yeah.
If you need some clue.
No, you see, thank you very much for the compliment. But the point is that it's easy for us at moments like this to begin to look for a scapegoat, someone to hold responsible. What I'm saying is a failure of the system. The entire governance system has to change. And that's why we said, look, like Chioma Ajunwa told you, we have to start funding athletes rather than funding the federations. if we have a database of our athletes, and that's what we're planning to do. And when I left the ministry, some people were celebrating that I've been sacked, because I said we need to start funding athletes directly. If we have a database of our athletes and we look at their global ranking, based on their global ranking, we begin to fund them, then they can take care of their medical, because in preparing for the Olympics, every single thing you put in your mouth matters. How many hours of sleep you put in matters. Every single training you do matters. It says it's nothing else perhaps they require your discipline more than preparing for elite competition. Now, if you fund athletes can hire their own trainers, they can hire their own nutritionists, they can hire their own physiotherapists, they can procure those by themselves. Now, we continue to monitor them, give them fund directly, and when their rating or their ranking drops, it reflects in how much money we are giving them. But at the moment, what we are doing is that we are funding federations rather than funding athletes. And no corporate sponsor will want to put his money where he knows that this money is likely to end up where it should not end up to. So I think it's the paradigm shift that needs to happen. So, and if we are able to do that paradigm shift and begin to identify Nigerian athletes all over the world, including in Nigeria, and build a database and start to fund them in preparation for the future. If we do that, maybe we stand a chance. But as for the Tokyo Olympics, I can tell you that nobody will be surprised. Look, if you look at the medal table, it reflects almost the size of every country's economy. Yes. Who are the top leaders? China, United States, Britain, France. If you look at GDP, you can almost put the medal table side by side GDP. That is not coincidence. It means that Olympics is a way of projecting soft power, and nations have realized it. And they are spending heavily on it. 2.4 billion, how much does Nigeria spend? It's not even enough for countries to prepare for one gold medal at the Olympics. So, but I can see people are cashing out on lottery fund. Government is not doing anything to make them pay into sports, right? So I think this is the conversation we need to have. But I must also add quickly that yes, we are so much concerned about not winning medals, but we should celebrate boys like Adegoke. Nigeria is represented in the 100 meters final for the first time in 25 years. That's a lot, right? Grace Nwokocha ran her personal best at the Olympics. That's a lot. That's massive. So we should look at this and as the cup being half full rather than half empty. What it means is that Adegoke, with careful, by the time he ran a semi-final at sub 10, his legs were gone. So it's clear that when you have to run the race of your life to qualify from the heat, you can only go down from there. You can't go up. But and that is why sports has become science. It's something that the institution has to be carefully developed and built for achieving podium success. It's not something you do and you hope that something will happen. It's not a place you go and sing, you are a miracle working God, help us. No, it's not going to happen.
Well, on Adegoke, I think you are right. Edo State, his home state, is even planning to celebrate him. Earlier on, I said we have hopes in 100 meters hurdles. But it looks like we lost out through Toby Loba Amushon. She came forth. So we're left with Ese Brume and Blessing Oborududu in wrestling 68 kilograms category. But Adesua referred to Olympics in 2020. Then, you were the Minister of Sports, right?
2012.
2012, London Olympics, 2012. Now, but we didn't do well in the main Olympics, but we did very well in the Paralympics. Why do we tend to excel in the Paralympics and in the main summer games we don't do well? That's one. And second, talking about Sunday Dare, he was quoted in the papers yesterday as saying that he wants to tinker with the national sports industry, system. He wants to introduce a national athletics development program, and he's also going to introduce a sports development fund that will be private sector driven. What do you think of all of this?
You see, there is merit in all those kind of statements. When you are under pressure, you say those kind of things. So that you are, I said the same thing, after London.
You would know better.
You would know better.
I said the same thing after London. But what I'm saying is that I think the first mistake that was made was merging the National Sports Commission with the Ministry of Sport. You cannot merge National Sports Commission need to remain a standalone parastatal of a professional commission, right? As a parastatal of the Ministry of Sports, so that you can bring in competent professional people who know how to run sports, who have played sports before, to be in charge. You as administrator, you cannot do that. You need people who are competent, who you can ask questions to do it for you. That is one. Two, I think the issue of sports lottery fund, I remember the argument at that time was that if you set up the sports fund, that is going to end up as another slush fund. So it's not the money that matters. It's what you are able to do with the fund you are able to get. You can raise this money and ring fence it and ensure that even the minister does not have the power to unilaterally disburse this fund. And what you do with the fund is, like I keep saying, you have to fund athletes rather than funding administration. Look, if there's one thing I've learned in my time in the sports sector is that not one of Nigerian athletes feel they are competing for Nigeria. Not one. I did not meet one of them that felt she was competing for Nigeria. These boys, these girls are doing this thing for themselves. Why is it that? Why is it like that? Because they don't feel that Nigeria has supported them. We are talking of these boys, we want them to win medals so that we will celebrate. But what did we do for them? What did we do for them? Most countries like China recruit children as early as 4-5, age 4-5, and put them in a regime of training that goes on for years. So we don't do that. So, and we expect that people will go and try their best and win medal for us, then we'll roll out the drum and celebrate. So it's not going to happen. So for me, I think it's the culture that needs to change. Nigeria itself has to ask itself, what do we want to do with sports? All this obsession with medal without doing what it takes to prepare for it is not going to lead us anywhere. So for me, I think those things are important. But it's not going to deliver you medal in Paris. You have to look at the other Olympics, not the next one in 4 years. Unless you start now to look at the rating of your athletes all over the world in various competitions and invest in them to be able to deliver those things for you.
But why do we do better in the Paralympics? That's a metaphor?
Okay, as regards Paralympics, you see, the truth is that most other countries don't really take Paralympics very seriously. That's the truth. And another one is that Paralympics, you see that Nigerians do well in Paralympics. They do well in Paralympics most of the time from powerlifting, And if you go to National Stadium in Surulere now, you see those boys lifting weight. That's what they do. That's all they can do, right? So I don't think we can console ourselves to say we do well in Paralympics, but Paralympics, with due respect, is not the same thing as the Olympics proper. Most countries don't really take Paralympics seriously, but in Nigeria, over the years, we have learned to compensate ourselves with Paralympics. So we go there, and they do well with due respect to the young men and women who compete for us and do Nigeria proud. I'm not putting them down. But the bitter truth is that no matter what we do in Paralympics, the world will only begin to respect us if we do well in the main Olympics.
Okay, very quickly, Dr. Abati had asked you earlier in the opening question about officials fighting over phones given to the athletes in Japan. I mean, this was phones gifted to the athletes for participation. Is this also a problem with funding, preparation? I mean, what do you have to say to this, and what should be done to such officials? Are you surprised to hear this, or is it common?
It's bad behavior. It should be. It's unacceptable. It's bad behavior. It shouldn't have happened. I remember those kind of things tend to happen. I remember after the Paralympics, President Jonathan at the time gave some money to the Paralympic athletes, and I know that some of the officials decided to, share in the booth, in the
handshake.
booty. I had to step. Yeah, I had to step in and made a big nuisance of myself. And before the end of the day, people started returning the money that they have collected. So those who have spent it went to look for the ones they have spent and return it, and we're sure that So
thank you very much.
I think it's bad behavior. It shouldn't have happened.
Well, thank you very much, Malam Bolaji Abdullahi. Thank you for joining us on the morning show and for your insights. Thank you very much indeed.